guys, welcome. We're back this afternoon with Martel Roddick again, and we are talking about all things food, vegetarianism, veganism, raw food. This chick has done it, and she knows the hairy lowdown about it. And I didn't actually know this about her because I just know that she knows a lot about food, but it turns out that she's actually studied nutrition. So she is a nutritionist, although she doesn't practice it as her work. So she knows stuff, people. And so we're going to talk to her about her personal journey and about how it comes about that she is a vegetarian and a vegan, and her dabbling in raw food and who and why and what. So if you've been dabbling, if you've been thinking, I don't know, hey, I've always been drawn to being more of a vegetarian. I'm worried about those poor animals. I'm worried about my health. I'm worried about all this red meat. I'm worried about this stuff. This is the conversation to listen to, help to kind of take you maybe a little bit in that direction and see what happens. So as you all know by now probably, I'm Angela Hardy. I have a practice that teaches people how to love themselves. I work with the mind. I work with how thought works to create your felt experience. I work with teaching people how to have a better experience of their life from the point of view of what is going on up here, and using all sorts of wonderful techniques with kinesiology and principles and whatnot to guide people to have a happier experience of their lives. And so it's apropos of that I interview these wonderful people who have other ways of hacking your life and getting into having these really cool experiences in your life and having a joyful and a happy and a life that is filled with well-being and contentment and peace and connection and love and so on and so on and so forth. So here is Martel Roddick. Welcome, Martel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. Nice to be here again.
Such a pleasure to have you back on. We had such a great interview earlier in the week, and all about conscious breathing, which Martel knows a lot about. And she knows a lot about food too, so today we're going to talk about that. Martel, you've dabbled a lot in food. Tell me more about that. What was your journey around food? Like, why did you, I mean, presumably at one point you were a meat eater and you kind of went and played around and saw where you were banned. Tell us a bit about that journey.
So I grew up on a farm, a meat farm. So that was kind of a meat farm, yes. So I grew up with meat for breakfast, meat for tea time, you know. We really ate a lot of meat. So that was my main love in terms of food. But I was always also interested in health. And that is why I went to study dietetics after school at Stellenbosch, and I loved it. But yet, for some reason, I didn't feel that I was in shape because of the way that I was eating. I was applying the dietetic ways of eating, and I was in shape, but I didn't feel that vibrant feeling that I wanted to feel. Okay. But I did think it was because of my age. I thought, you always think you're old. When you're 16, you're old now, and then you kind of think, maybe that's how life is. Maybe I'm supposed to.
How old were you when you were thinking you were old now?
No, not old, but I thought maybe my
come on, tell us how old you were back then.
No, even at 22, I thought, maybe my body is changing,
Right, this is the body, yeah.
Yeah, and you really think like this is normal. It's normal to feel tired. You think it's normal to feel lazy, lethargic, dull in your mind. You think this is normal, and people around you speak to them, and they all feel tired after a meal. They're all like, "Oh, I'm so lazy now. I had a big meal," and that's normal to you. And people are watching movies, and I really thought this is not how I want my life to be.
Right.
But I don't know how to change it. I even at some point started Googling, for how do I have yuppie flu maybe? I try to think of ways, why am I so tired and lazy and not feeling fresh? And then I saw the raw food diet. And I thought, let me just try it out for like a short time. I'll make like 3 months and that's it. And then I can just eat meat again and do everything. So I went for 3 months. That was in 2014, I think it was. And I
Yes.
went for 3 months on raw, or like
Yes.
completely raw. The only
Yeah.
thing I didn't have that I had that wasn't raw was green tea. I mean, that's so like important.
You were pedantic. Yeah.
So I was really, really committed to this. And Angela, I promise you, it was like a almost like a veil. And I'm not the first person to
Really.
say this. My mom also said this. Another friend of ours said it. It's like a veil that lifts off your mind. Your
Yeah.
eyesight feels clearer. In fact, my eyesight did improve. And even my mom last week, she's now turning 80, I think, next year or the year after. And she doesn't have to wear glasses. The doctor said
Oh,
last week, he said, you don't need glasses anymore. But she is really eating very, very high raw. Um, so you feel like your mind is just shifting, everything becomes clear and like a window that's clean. And my mind, I became really happy, like a blissful, joyful, light, transparent feeling almost to your body.
yes. Yes. Yes.
And so anyway, we can get back to this. But then I went to Croatia for holiday. So I
Yes.
remember now, I came from meat eating to raw, vegan.
Yes.
So
Yes.
boom, boom,
Yeah. Boom.
Croatia. We- you know,
Party.
yes. So I just went straight into meat on my holiday, which wasn't the problem. I mean, I wanted to try the raw. I did try it, and now I was enjoying my meat time. And when we got back home, I continued eating normal food. You know, I say normal, but meats and things.
Carnivore.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I just started to ground again. It's very grounding meat. You know, I just started to feel normal. You know, the tired, lazy, lethargic.
Heavy. Yeah.
Yes, I started to feel like that. My allergies came back because my allergies disappeared completely on the
Oh
road,
wow. Okay. Yeah.
completely. All came back, and I just thought this is not the way I want to live my life. So then I thought, okay, let me try to go back onto raw. But it wasn't easy for me. I couldn't do that. It was hard for me to leave the meat again and the cheese.
Mm.
So then I went vegan. But it took me a bit of time. So anyone who's eating meat and wants to, you know, go to raw, go to vegan, it's not that easy. Not it's not hard, but it takes time. You need to be ready for it.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
is, I think the raw was a key part in my life
Mm.
to get me to remember to know what life could be like.
Right. The difference was so significant that it
Yes,
held within it some motivation to do whatever was necessary to get to
yes.
that place where you were completely vegan.
Yes, and now I'm completely vegan. I'm quite a strict vegan in terms of no, not a strict vegan, a strict in terms of I don't eat any sugar,
Mm.
I don't eat any wheat, and I eat really whole foods.
Mm.
Also, when I eat chocolate, I eat raw chocolate. I don't really like to eat, you know, normal cocoa. So
Right.
yeah, I'm quite strict in a way with that.
Yeah.
But I feel almost the same than on raw, but just not as good. So yeah, that's basically my journey. Basically, I feel very light, and I try to maintain it through my diet. And it is now not a case of feeling tired anymore, lethargic. None of that is happening. So it's a
That's
new life
amazing.
for me, and I can't go back. I really can't go back.
Yeah. That's really an amazing story. I mean, it's, people will often go vegetarian. My niece went vegetarian, and it has to do with like a moral issue about the animals and about eating meat and that kind of stuff, which is a very, very beautiful and thoughtful and kind and generous reason to stop eating meat. But it's more than that. It's that actually you literally can change your experience of your life when you change your diet.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to, and don't get me wrong, people, I still eat meat. I just, I'm a kind of a flexitarian, mostly vegetarian during the week, throw some meat in sometimes when I throw a braai. You know what I mean? I'm very simple and easy about what it is that I do eat. Don't. So I'm not lecturing to you. This is not converted lecturing to non-conversion. But I do know that, we all know that the meat contains a lot of hormones, and that's going to affect your hormones, and your hormones are going to affect your mood, and your mood is going to affect how you live your life, and it's going to affect your cycle, it's going to affect your capacity to fall pregnant, it's going to affect everything, because the stuff is full of stuff.
It is.
And it's also true that vegetables are full of, they GMO, some of them, and they are full of pesticides. And so you also, even if you're going vegetarian, sometimes you've got to be very careful with your choices if you want to live a very clean diet. Because there's a lot of stuff going on with vegetables too. And it does become something that I guess, when you feel a significant difference in your life, there's a strong motivation to move in a certain direction and stick with it. And for me, it's like, you know what, you don't have to you do what you like, do what you want, but pay attention.
Yes.
And that, I think, is what you did, isn't it? Let me do something and pay attention and see what happens.
Yes.
In fact, when Martel was eating raw, I went and had dinner with her. And her husband, Daniel, actually invited us. And he was like, yeah, okay, but do you mind? Because we're probably going to have raw food. So I'm like, what do you mean mind? I'm like, whoo, here's an adventure, I can't wait. And we had the most delicious meal. I remember that you had dehydrated some black mushrooms, and I think you marinated them in tamari or something like that. And they were amazing. And there was all sorts of other things that we ate that were really, really delicious. I think there was a spiralized
yes, sweet potato or baby marrow. Yes, was a mixture.
Yeah. And it was a delicious meal. And I was like, because I love food of all kinds. And there's nothing I like more than to investigate a new kind of food.
Yes.
You know what I mean by that? It's like, oh, I wonder if I could, because I, also grew up in the meat and potatoes thing and two boiled vegetables on the side. And then you're like, but I don't like vegetables, because I'm not surprised you don't like them. They're boiled and shoved on the side, and the only thing that anybody ever paid attention to when they cooked was meat.
You're right.
So
no, you're right. Yeah.
It's a big learning, isn't it? I mean, you have to discover how to make beautiful food. Vegan.
Yes, I must say, Angela, for me, I'm not a cook. Okay. My husband did not marry me for my cooking skills. I can do things, but I cannot cook, and he knew that from the start. So I must say, in our house, we do it very simply, because if I had to cook, it was not going to happen. I would have just eaten the normal meat and things. So I know when you came to visit us, we had fancy, like nice things, but generally we do eat very simply, like rice with veggies and very basic foods, fruit, whole fruit, banana, for breakfast, like whole fruit, handful of nuts. We have a very basic way of eating. But I did actually. Can I just show you something, Angela?
Yes.
I brought. I'm interrupting the interview in a way, but I just want to show you this little book.
Yes, that's perfect. It's a good book. Rawlicious.
That was the book that actually that I cooked for you that day.
Okay.
The mushrooms with the pesto, and that was the book that got us into raw. I just wanted to show it. Rawlicious. It's a very good book to start dabbling into raw foods. And that actually,
sorry.
This changed our life. Rawlicious. Yeah.
And see, it's well used. You've definitely paid for that a time or two.
Yes.
Well, after I had that meal with you, I said to Brett, we're going to play around with this a little bit. He's like, okay. Right, because what does Brett know? He eats what I give him. He doesn't.
Yes.
He has no opinion. He eats what I give him or he shuts up. But I love cooking and I love food, and I'm very creative in the kitchen. I'm full of there's no point eating it if it's not amazing, right? So you got to make it amazing. And so I played around with raw food for a while as well, just because I wanted to know how good can the food be when you're dealing with such a limited selection of ingredients. Do you know what I mean? When you can't even cook it to change the taste of it, how good can food be? And we did it also for a few months, not strict, but a lot of our meals were then raw food
Yes.
based. So I was using raw recipes and whatnot and making stuff up. And I fell in love with my liquidizer
Oh,
because
yes.
I
Yes.
made so many raw sauces in the liquidizer. And basically my discovery, because I didn't have a dehydrator to dehydrate anything.
Yes.
So my discovery about raw food was you get yourself a liquidizer and you learn how to make a good raw sauce. And they are
But
either
did you mind?
tomato-based sauce and cashew-based sauce and
Yes.
all those spices, and you throw a bit of date in there for sweetness, and before you know it, you've got this most amazing, delicious sauce.
Yes. You
And
are
people
so
are
right.
also under the illusion that raw food is always cold food, and that's not true. Because anything up to 40 degrees is still considered to be raw. So you're not
Yes.
cooking it, but you can eat it warm. And we were actually doing this during winter, and we were perfectly comfortable. Anyway, 3 days in from this, Brett says to me, okay, that was all very nice, but I feel like I'm not, it's not that I'm hungry, it's that there's no sense of that density.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That things
Yes.
like meat and bread and pasta and simple carbohydrates, and especially meat goes in your belly and you're like, oh,
Yes.
I'm satisfied. And I guess that's part of that whole experience of being so full and so like, oh, after you've eaten.
Yes. Angela, can I add to that?
Yes, yes.
I didn't know how to put this in words, and you just said it. So for me, earlier you asked me, and why did or how did my journey happen, and to get to veganism or raw food or lighter foods. It's because
Yes.
once you've experienced what you just mentioned, that feeling of lightness, like where you almost feel like you should eat something heavier because you're used to it, but you're actually fine. You're not hungry
Yes.
on
You've
the
got to get
light.
your head around that, right? You
Yes,
have to
yes,
get your head
yes.
around that.
When you
You
realize
used
a lot of
to
emotion,
associate the one with the other, the heaviness with
yes,
satiation, but they're not the same thing.
and there's some kind of emotional attachment to the heaviness.
Yes.
I don't know what kind of thing it is, but we want to feel, or I used to want to feel heavy.
Well, you were used to it.
And once you felt what you just mentioned, the lightness in your stomach, I now completely always maintain that lightness. How can I say? I never feel that fullness ever.
Mm,
Even
mm,
if I eat fruit, the moment I feel there's an
mm,
awareness of fullness, I stop.
mm,
Because when you lose that transparent feeling of, when you feel like you're merging with your environment, you feel settled in your environment. The moment I eat something a little bit too heavy or too much, or this breaks that subtleness, then I know to stop. And vegan foods make it easier because you can eat more. You can still enjoy a big meal and still maintain
yeah.
that lightness.
Yeah. Now that point actually that you're talking about is very interesting because I've worked with a lot of people who struggle with their weight. And one of the major reasons is that people don't know when to stop eating. They're not
Yes,
aware of the sensation of
yes,
hunger, satiation, emotional satisfaction. They don't know where to draw the line that says, oh, I'm not hungry anymore.
yes,
And actually, ultimately, health aside, the value of the food, the nutritional quality of the food aside, if you're just talking about weight, you could literally eat anything, but stop the moment you have that sensation of
yes,
hunger.
yes,
It could be
absolutely.
cheesecake, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It could be chocolate
Ab-
cake with
Yes,
icing. Just
yes,
stop in that moment and you'll be fine
yes.
in terms of
That's
weight
how I
loss.
used to eat. Yes. I
Yeah,
used to eat like that. I was always in shape. I mean, I knew that was exactly the key to it all.
it is
But
a
to
very
feel
good
the
key.
extra, yeah, to feel the extra life and the aliveness, for
Yeah,
that you do need to
that's
eat
nutrition.
healthier. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nutritional quality of it. So that's really cool. And when you did raw food, were you doing a bunch of smoothies and that kind of stuff as well, or not?
Yes. Actually, quite a lot of smoothies. Yes. The bananas make a nice creamy smoothie. It's a nice
You
base for
got to have
everything.
banana, or at least like pawpaw or mango or something creamy
Yes,
to
mango. Oh,
give it a
mango is
boost.
amazing. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are so afraid of bananas. They think they're going to get fat or carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is the biggest
That's true.
fear.
I
And it
know,
is so
really.
sad because it's the main energy source is carbohydrates, and um, in fact, sorry, I'm just getting off track, but our nanny, our domestic lady, she had diabetes.
Okay.
And within 2 weeks, she was off a medication. She just ate bananas, dates, and green salad for 2 weeks. And
Really?
yes, she ate, excuse me, for 2 weeks we did completely raw.
Yeah.
She came to me actually, she was crying and she said, listen, I have a big problem. She's a single mother. She's got
Mm-hmm.
4 beautiful children and she cannot afford to die now. And her doctor said, listen, you're going to die. You
Yeah.
better, you know, make a plan. So she came to me and she was crying and I felt a bit worried because I wanted to give her advice to go raw,
Yeah.
but I know that they say that you can be a diabetic and go raw, but I have not personally
That's
experienced
okay.
that, and I haven't, as a dietitian, I haven't, I wouldn't have advised it to someone, you know.
Mm.
So I had yeah, I read a little bit and I saw, a lot of the raw food people, and I thought back to when I was raw, and I thought, when you are raw, you're very much in touch with life again. You're very
Right.
deep with life.
Right.
So I don't believe that those guys, the raw foodists, would really get it wrong because they quite it's a big part of their life, this whole nutrition thing. It's
Yeah.
almost their whole life.
Yeah.
And I feel that they know what they're talking about because I know it. When I was raw, I remember how I thought, how did I not know about this? How has no one spoken about this? This is a whole different world. My life is changing. My
Yeah.
universe is changing.
Yeah.
Um, so I said to her, let's do 2 weeks of raw
Mm-hmm.
and we'll see. So she ate very simply. She didn't want to spend a lot of money, so she basically eat lettuce, tomato, cucumber, just a salad like that, and bananas and dates. That was it. She was a bit in a panic, and she wanted to do something quickly.
Yeah.
3 days after she started, this is now 3 days now.
Oh,
She
yeah.
didn't have to pack ice on her legs when she gets home because she used to. Every evening she had to pack ice on her legs for the burn. It would burn
Yeah.
so much. So 3 days after she started, no more ice needed
Oh,
on her legs. No more burning feeling at all. And two
oh,
weeks later, glucose perfectly fine. I mean, it might have been earlier even, but she had herself tested 2 weeks later, so properly at the clinic.
yeah.
Um, and she's now, okay, after 2 weeks, she went back to normal vegan. So she
Mm-hmm.
would eat things like oats and normal vegan food,
Mm-hmm.
carbohydrates only, which is kind of strange if you think.
Yeah, that's kind of contrary to the popular
Yeah,
advice. Yeah.
yes. Um, so she's a vegan now, and she's a hardcore vegan. I mean, she's like it's very important in her life.
Yeah,
She
sure.
won't go, there's no way she will go back. So it's quite ironic that there's not enough information out there. People are afraid of carbohydrates. They're afraid of fruit. They say, "Oh, I've got sugar. I can't have bananas." You've got the
Mm.
diabetic who got off diabetes with bananas and dates, which is your high sugar.
They're
You
high
know.
G, yeah, both of them, yeah. Dates in particular are very high G.
Yes, and
Oh,
yeah. So I feel quite strongly that there's a whole world out there that people don't know about in terms of the effects of nutrition on your mind. And once
yeah,
your
talk
mind
about that.
yeah, and once your mind is shifted, your universe is different. Your whole life is different.
Yeah,
I mean, if I wake up with a bad mood, I've got a bad day, regardless of what's happening around me.
yeah,
So foods are, to me personally, it's not for getting full. It's not for feeling satisfied or even energy. It's for me. It's purely for my life experience through my mind.
Okay.
I want the clarity. You want peaceful feeling. You don't want to feel tired ever.
Mm. Mm.
And I never feel tired ever, unless I go sleep and you're sleepy, but you don't
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
tired. So
That's
I'm
amazing.
actually glad that you're asking, yeah, about food in this interview because of there's so many people out there that really need assistance and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, and you know what I always find is that it's it's hard to even think that there's going to be a real value in the outcome. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like, oh, maybe I'd be better off if I was vegetarian.
Mm.
But then I only know how to cook meat, and there's a braai on Saturday, and then it seems hard because you don't know this is definitely going to make a difference for
Yes.
me. So
Yes.
it's absolutely categorically going to help me for my mind, for my tiredness, for my confusion, for my sense of
Yes.
well-being, for my energy levels, for my capacity to function well at sport, for my capacity to concentrate, and so on. If you knew categorically this is going to work for you, it would be so much easier to make a decision to do something of value in your life, whatever that thing is.
Yes.
Most people, because they're like, well, maybe it will and maybe it won't, and
Mm.
I have heard some people talk about it, so then it's not like it's like, oh, the motivation is hard. But when you know something is absolutely necessary, the motivation is really easy. I mean, you must
Yes.
talk to people about using food as medicine, right?
Mm.
As a dietitian, food as
Yes.
medicine. Talk more about that in terms of food as medicine. Like if I came to you and I said I got cancer, I'm sure you'd be like, girl,
Ah.
let's start, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't speak as a dietitian because
No,
Angela,
but like if I came to you
no,
for
I just want
advice,
to say, no, I just want to say, I do not, and I'm sorry to say this, but do
mm,
understand that I studied it many years ago.
yeah,
How many years ago? Many years ago.
yeah,
And I do not agree with what I've learned. I'm sorry, I do not agree with it. I do understand what I learned. You know, it was nice, it was interesting. I'm sure it's very useful for hospitals, but for me as a person, and I'm
mm,
personally, just speaking for me,
yeah, that's interesting.
I feel that nutrition is so much more subtle type of medicine. It's
Yeah,
not just protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and vitamins, and minerals.
no,
There's subtleness to it that I think when it comes to healing, you have to well, one maybe has to forget about the high level stuff that we learn and rather focus on how does this how much clarity. Oh, this is a strange way of saying it, but this is how I if I had to get sick,
mm-hmm.
how I would approach it. I would say, what gives me the most clarity? What gives me the strongest sense of transparency and clarity inside of my body? Like
Hey,
it's I think for someone who eats a lot of meat, it will be a bit difficult to understand what I'm saying. But for someone who has eaten or is eating raw, they would 100% understand what I'm saying.
yeah,
Um, but what is making me feel clean and pure and that lightness, that
yeah,
transparency? I don't know how to say it really. And for me, it would be just go raw. I mean, if I had to get sick today or anyone had to come to me, I wouldn't speak as a dietitian at all. I would speak as someone who has experienced that feeling of it's completely transformative mentally. And
right,
I
right,
can't put it in words, Angela, but I would just throw that guy straight into the swimming pool for raw food and say, swim.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's no options now. You have to do this. And
yeah,
for me, raw food is a medicine. I don't care if you have cancer, allergies, diabetes, anything. Any disease comes my way, I'm going raw.
yeah,
Cystic fibrosis, so many people get cured from that through raw foods. I mean, it's like a life sentence, and yet people get cured. Like diabetes, my nanny was really in a difficult space, and no one ever said to her, do a few weeks on the raw and your life will be completely saved.
Yeah.
No one ever told her that. So for
Yeah.
me, I have one word. If someone said, I'm sick, whether you have a runny nose or anything, raw. Want to lose weight? Raw. Have hormonal issues? Acne? Raw.
Raw.
You know? And the nice thing is that it works so quickly. So
Yes,
after one
exactly.
day, you feel better. After 2 days, you start to see your skin is different. There's no puffiness, inflammation around the eyes. Um, there's such drastic and quick improvements in your skin, in your mind, in your energy that you don't need much more motivation. It happens quick. There's quick results. Your body changes. For instance, yeah. So for any disease, anything, I would just say raw to start with, and after that you can maneuver it yourself. Decide high raw vegan or vegan. Personally, I wouldn't ever suggest eating animal products
At all.
ever, but that's me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what incenses me so much about allopathic medicine because do you know that a few years ago, when you studied to be a doctor in America, I was listening to a podcast about this. When you studied to be a doctor in America some years ago, they didn't do more than 1 hour in their entire
I
coursework
know. Yes,
about
Angela.
nutrition. Not
Yes,
even 1 hour. And to me,
yes.
it's like, I do not understand that. Well, there's the whole story about how it's pharmaceutical based, medicine is pharmaceutical based, it's created by the pharmaceutical companies, the study and the learning is all created from that point of view. But to me, it's like, how can you have a healing modality that doesn't even consider
I
what is
know.
the very center of your health, and that is your food? It makes no sense to me at all.
It
And
has.
I can't tell you how many clients come to see me and I'm like, what did the doctor say? And they're like, no. I said, what did the doctor say about food, vitamins, nutrition? What did the doctor say about diet? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And I have friends who are in their early 20s who have they have cystic fibrosis. They cough their lungs out. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what their doctor told them, their mother, when they were children?
Yes.
To this day, they still follow this principle, even though I'd like at them. Eat as much junk food as you like and as you can. And their
Why?
diet consists, yep, their diet consists of potato chips, sweets, chocolates, high fat,
Oh, it's so
deep
sad.
fried, meat, Kentucky. It's like, I look at them and I'm just like, oh my word. Why? Because the only medical understanding that he had in terms of nutrition was that CF patients battle to take nutrition in. And so they tend to be
Yes.
undernourished. They have difficulty keeping weight. So his answer to that is eat a lot of crap.
Yes.
So that your body has lots of crap to take in and make weight with.
Yes. Or add, like we had to give people if they have if they need a lot of kilojoules, and you're a
Yeah.
cancer patient, and
Yeah.
there's not enough food. I mean, look, I understand the concept, but you would give them oros or things like that to get the kilojoules,
Full
and
of
then it's
all sorts of preservatives and all sorts of rubbish. I mean, we're
horrible.
pumped full of chemo. Just throw me a few more toxins in there. What's your problem?
I know, and it's really that is why I don't have a problem with it, but I've walked away from
Yeah.
that field
Well, I have the
because
same opinion.
especially after you've been raw and you've seen that there's a whole different story here. I mean, this is
Yeah.
like, veganism is one thing, but raw, this is
Yeah.
like, you get a bit of a surprise. You're like, whoa, I never knew my life could be like this. Your
Right.
mind is so different. You're so happy. It's like
Mm.
I think if someone has depression, if one of my kids have to get depression, I would throw them also straight into a raw food diet. I
Mm.
mean, Sky is basically a raw foodist, but Stormy is vegan. Yeah, Stormy is more of a vegan, but
Yeah.
Sky is a very happy child, and joyful. And she sees, the food. She knows it's the fruit, and she can feel it. Like if
She
I give
is
her,
Strict, hey? That child. She's
Yeah,
strict.
please.
I went to a birthday party for Martel's husband, and there were a bunch of people there, obviously not just this family. So I was like, okay, I'll bring cupcakes. And she came and she looked at me and she said, do those cupcakes have sugar in them? And I said, yes, they're cake. And she said, not for me in that case. I was like,
Oh,
how old is she?
she's now, she turned 8 just now. Yeah.
8 years old. Oh, no, no, I won't have that in that case. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And why is that? Because I'm not like questioning her belief. I was
Yeah,
curious
yeah,
as
I
to
would
where
rather
that
not. Yeah. It's a
power
bit
of
weird.
conviction came from. And she's like, I don't want cancer. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Don't be eating that cupcake, girl. You're... So
Wow.
she's like, she's totally into it and very, very,
No,
very
Angela,
decisive.
when she was 3, she was at her nursery school.
Mm-hmm.
It was her birthday, and she had the teacher sent me a picture of her. She had the cupcakes in front of her for all her friends, and right in front of her was a bunch of bananas that was for her, and the cupcakes was for her friends. But um, I've never told them not to have anything. You know, if they ask, "Mommy, I want a cupcake," I would never, ever, ever say no.
Yeah.
I would always give them what they want. But my rule from the beginning was, you can eat anything you want, but I want you to feel the way that you feel afterwards, in terms of, do you feel a little bit more tired? Do you feel a little bit more lazy or happier or not as happy? And so if you give Sky even just sugar-free sweet, some of those, she won't eat it. And you'll say, but why? She'll say, I don't feel as fresh, on that after I eat that.
Amazing.
And when it comes from a place of understanding why you're doing it, you don't need any perseverance or
No.
self motivation. Like I never believe in motivation. It's just something that, if you need to motivate yourself to do something, then you clearly don't know why you're doing it. You know,
Exactly.
it's so, once you know why you're doing something, you don't need any positive thinking or motivation. It's a no-brainer. You know.
Yeah.
So for me, if someone offers me sugar, I say no, and it's not because I'm afraid of cancer or diabetes. It's just I don't want to feel the way I feel when I eat sugar, and it's
Mm.
personal to me. It's not like I'm saying everyone, you know, shouldn't eat sugar, but I don't want to do it. I
Mm.
feel
Mm.
I want to feel good. I have this one life. I have this one mind, and I'm very responsible for my one mind and the way I perceive the world. And I've got complete control over the way that feels.
Mm-hmm.
So why on earth am I going to not choose the best for myself? And it
Yeah.
affects my entire life. It affects my body. It affects your relationships. There's many people who struggle with their weight, and they don't feel confident, even though they look beautiful. To me, they look beautiful, but they don't feel good.
That's it.
And I want to feel good. I just want to feel happy and joyful and free. I don't want to, and not tired. My
Yeah.
That lethargic feeling has been gone since I started with the raw. Or when I started with veganism, actually, after. But it's a choice. You shouldn't need any motivation.
Well, I want to say that my own experience with it, although I'm very flexible with what I do, is that it is not difficult to eat well, even if you're going to eat raw. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It doesn't matter that palette of available stuff is limited. There's creation possibilities of massive magnitude to
Hmm.
really eat well. And that is a lot of people's excuse for not taking care of themselves, is that they want to eat, they want to enjoy their food, they want to enjoy what they're eating. It's like, well, make something that tastes good, and you can do that with anything. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of really amazing dishes. And since I've started eating more vegetarian, and I'll eat meat occasionally, but mostly Brett and I eat vegetarian. And when we're home, especially, we're eating vegetarian for the most part. And it's actually easier to cook once you know how without meat.
Yes,
It's
it
just
is.
easier.
Chuck
I don't
it.
know why. And I cook. I like cooking. It's just easier to cook without meat somehow.
Yes.
There's less. It's less. It's less process. It's like I'm like one dish babe. I'm these amazing single dishes, and off we go.
Yes.
So there's a lot of really. It's really possible to eat well, whatever you choose. And I think the biggest message out of this conversation is you are responsible for your well-being, whether that is physical or emotional. And food and diet and taking care of what you put into your body can be very, very influential in that well-being. So if you are not feeling 100% and you don't even know it, that's a route to consider to start just moving gently in that direction. And my own attitude towards food is people struggle to give things up. You don't have to give anything up. Just start
Yes.
adding a lot
Yes.
of what's good for you, and you'll find that there's no space left so much for the things that are not good for you, and so you don't crave them, and you're not in the cycle of craving because you're satiated, you're satisfied, you feel good. You're not reaching for that satisfaction out of the chocolate bar or
Yes.
the packet of chips or the crack, basically. You're not reaching for that and thinking, oh my God, I have to give up my chips, I love my chips. You just don't long for chips because you've actually satisfied, you feel you've had enough to eat, you feel good. So you're not like scratching around for something else. And that
Yes.
is actually the easiest way to think about things. Don't think about improving your diet as giving something up. Think about improving your diet as adding something new that is good, that tastes good, that feels good, that helps you to feel good in yourself, and that is satisfying on all of these levels of I did well for myself, I feel good in myself, I feel like I have energy, this is amazing. Add, 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 add. And
Yes.
the other stuff will start to give itself up by itself as time
That's
goes by.
true. That is true. Can I add something to that, Angela?
Yes.
Um, for instance, I love to eat. I've never
Mm.
been on a diet. I don't know how people get it right to not eat enough. I want to feel not hungry. I want to feel full, but in a nice way.
Mm.
Um, so I eat a lot during the day, and I do eat a lot of starch. I
Mm.
eat a lot of rice. I eat a pot of rice with lentils and things every day,
Mm-hmm.
almost every day. But
Oh.
there's three. I think, yeah, I've got two main rules actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that if I do these two things, the rest of the day I can really just eat my things that I want to enjoy, my vegan whole foods, but starches
Mm-hmm.
or whatever I want to eat. But I need to know that I have eaten these things. I have one full lemon a day,
Oh yeah.
like at one, you squeeze it at the same, you squeeze the whole lemon into a cup of
Yeah.
hot water or whatever, and
Yeah.
you drink that for the pH, your pH balance.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard of the cancer pH balance
Yes,
situation.
I do lemon every day as well. It
Yes,
is my morning drink, lemon and hot water. I like
yes,
it.
yes. And then the
It
other
doesn't
thing,
only it doesn't only sort the pH balance, if I can just interrupt, guys. Those of you who crave sugar, you need to know that
oh
if you take sour in the morning, you won't crave sugar during the day. It
wow, oh
actually
wow, I
stops
never knew that.
the craving.
Wow, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Mm. So
Um,
lemon
that's
for
very good. I
pH.
never knew that.
Yeah, no, it makes a
Um,
huge difference. You don't have sugar cravings if you have something sour in the morning.
yeah, I'll share that information, especially with my nanny, the lady that had
Yeah.
the diabetes. Um, the other thing was a big green juice. Your
Okay.
dark greens. When I went raw, I was quite surprised to see because I'm sure when you went raw, you can see that you're like, oh my word, but what am I going to eat? There's just vegetables and fruit, but where am I going to get my strength from? My power.
Yeah.
And when you eat raw, you realize, for the first
Yeah.
time, I realized that it really does lie in spinach and it
Yeah.
does in your kale. Oh, yeah, it really is the case. I never knew that. So
Mm.
my big rule, and it is a rule. I probably don't have any rules in my life, but that is my one rule: is a green
Mm.
juice every day, which is kale or spinach and cucumber, green pepper, and then carrots and beetroot and ginger,
Okay.
or just a mixture, but dark greens. And when you
Yeah.
have that, a big, nice, big fat juice, which is dark green,
Mm. Yeah.
um, the rest of the day you just eat healthy vegan foods,
Yeah.
but you know that you've got your minerals. To give you an idea, when I went, look, I've always been kind of a thin person. I do not struggle with my weight, but I had anemia because I'm thin. So they say, "Oh, you're thin, so you got anemia." That's normal. I had to use glucophage for my sugar. Oh, you thin, you know how it is with thin people. Sometimes they get hypoglycemia or this or that. So I had anemia. I don't know what I had, but I had to use glucophage for my sugar to keep it nice and stable. And I was diagnosed with asthma, okay,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
all three disappeared when I went vegan. So, I mean, it's like asthma disappeared, boom, boom. Glucophage, I didn't even realize that I stopped taking the pills. Yeah, just
Yeah.
one day I
Oh,
just, oh my word, I don't use those pills anymore. And what was the other thing? Asthma, glucophage, what was the other thing? I can't even remember now. But the point is, everything has disappeared, and I felt like, why has no one ever told me this? So,
no,
so
because what do we do when you've got asthma? We give you drugs, and what do you do
yeah,
when you've got blood sugar problems? We give you drugs, and
yes.
what do you do? You know what I mean? It's like,
When I
oh,
asked
hold
my
on.
doctor why I'm sorry to say this, I hope she's not watching at some point, but when I asked her why do I have asthma, she said, "Oh no, that's completely normal for your age. As you get older, that happens." And
Really?
it makes me kind of sad,
Mm. Yeah, that is.
but that it's just accepted as normal. Or you know what? A lot of people get diabetes at my age, or from 40, 50, 60. Oh no, that's like a lifestyle disease.
Really? Oh,
Normal,
no problem.
You just have,
Don't
what must
worry,
I
just
do,
take these
doctor?
drugs.
Yes, what must I do, doctor? Just take these drugs. You'll be better. And guess what? You feel better. You know,
Yeah. So
so
then,
it
what do
works.
you do? You don't fix.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's a very sad situation actually in terms of nutrition. It's so powerful, especially for depression and all those things. And somehow, you walk in the street and people are eating ice cream and it looks happy and it looks good, but deep down there's a dullness of mind
Mm.
created by that. It's just the situation. But I sometimes think that I always say to my husband, it's almost like a little bit of a secret in life,
Mm.
in my view, like a little secret that only some will find out about.
Yeah.
And when I did the raw food, I realized that is a massive small secret
Yeah.
that very few get the opportunity in one lifetime to discover. But when you discover that, it's really like it's life changing. It is another world. You're so happy and free.
Yeah,
So
and it's not as though you can't eat ice cream, even if
no,
you raw. You know what I mean? I
yes,
mean, I have raw vegan ice cream in my freezer right now that I made once upon a
yes.
blue moon with bananas and with dates and with raw cocoa
Oh,
powder and all, and it was delicious. And I keep feeding it to people when they come to dinner parties, and they're like, "Oh, what is this?" I'm like, "Oh, no, chocolate ice cream,
and
not
how
a
easy
problem."
is that? How easy is that? You just freeze
It's
banana.
easy.
Yeah, and the dates are wonderful. The dates are like caramelly.
Yeah. No, I
Like
mean, it's easy to make, and that's the irony about raw food and vegetarian food. It's actually easier to make than all this lava that we've been going through.
yes,
So
yes.
that's been really inspiring to hear your story. I mean, I feel inspired to be less flexy and more deliberate and more intentional in my eating. So thank you very much for that. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Angela, for inviting me.
it. Really fascinating story. Thank you so much for joining us. I've loved our two talks. Guys, if you missed Montel's first talk about conscious breathing, that was also really, really interesting. So go back down the Facebook feed and go and find that, or you can, I'll post it to YouTube, I'm sure by now. So go and check it out on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and do remember to like and subscribe to everything and get notifications so you can get all of our good stuff. I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. It's been absolutely fascinating. Is anything at all going on with your health? You're the one who can take care of it. And start with the inside, and that is your diet. Start with your diet, look to your thinking, look to your other stuff that you can get help with, but you can do the diet part by yourself without anybody else doing anything about it. Start with looking at what you put in there. Brett always says we're a bubbling chemistry experiment. So if you're adding chemicals, you're going to get out of that the chemicals that you're putting in, and that's a good point, isn't it? Thanks very much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Martel. It's been a sweet
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you, Angela. Keep well. Bye-bye.
Bye bye, everybody.